block with the buff chest, out the wilderness with the ruggedness. I was born by myself, I don't need a posse, I get it on by myself. Adversaries get shelved.
How's it going, YouTube? It's been a while. Let's get started with this genetics video, shall we? One of the most fun topics to bring up concerning the homosexual agenda is the massive amount of lies they and the atheist supporters spread when it comes to genetics or being born with it. In this video, I pretty much go over the things that xxxthepeachxxx brought up several months ago when I smashed her video, whether she wants to admit it or not, and a couple of other people that will just a bunch of people that I've dealt with over the course of my time arguing this argument. On a quick tick before I get started, I want to let you know that the vast majority of this information is coming straight from True Origin's page on the gay gene. I have previously made 4 or 5 videos on homosexual arguments several months ago, and simply repeating this information over again is the same thing as reposting the video. So in order to avoid that, I'm going to take this approach instead. And I will add that the True Origins page has a plethora, and I mean a crap load of sources and references at the bottom, and a lot of quotes from actual scientists and doctors. So this is no bullcrap here. This is the real deal. So let's get started with the lie that's, unbelievably pushed the most. And unreally, it's actually still being used today. I kid you not. People, even to this day, are still claiming there's a gene for homosexuality because they are just that clueless to genetics. In the sidebar, there will be a link to the Human Genome Project where the X and Y chromosomes have been fully mapped and there was no homosexual gene found. For those of you using this sadic argument, please research and see there can't be one gene that determines homosexuality or heterosexuality. Thanks to the National Center of Biotechnology Information, we know that the X chromosome contains 150 million base pairs and harbors a total of 1,168 genes. Also, the Y chromosome, which is much smaller, contains only 50 million base pairs and is estimated to contain a mere 251 genes. Educational institutions such as Baylor University, the Max Planck Institute, the Sanger Institute, Washington University in St. Louis, and others have spent countless hours and millions of research dollars analyzing these unique chromosomes. As the data began to pour in, they allowed scientists to construct gene maps using actual sequence from the Human Genome Project. And yet neither map for the X or the Y chromosomes contained any gay gene. The link for that will be on the side. This is the sad argument the Peach used against Fool for Lifetime months ago, and I refuted her, but I'm going to go into detail and show you why she and anyone else that uses this sad argument has failed. This lie is based on an inconclusive study conducted by Simon LeVay in 1991 at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in San Diego, California. LeVay's studies can be summed up in the conclusion that homosexual men had the same size interstitial nuclei in the hypothalamus region of the brain as women, but smaller than the heterosexual men. Here lies the plethora of problems with his study. Number one is his study was never reproduced, and human neuroanatomical studies of this kind have a very poor track record for reproducibility. William M. Byne, MD, PhD, notes the following: of 19 homosexual subjects used in the study, all had died of complications of acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS. AIDS has been shown to decrease testosterone levels, so it should be expected that those who suffered from that condition would have smaller INAH, which again is interstitial nuclei of the anterior hypothalamus. His inclusion of a few brains from heterosexual men with AIDS did not adequately address the fact that at the time of death, virtually all men with AIDS have decreased testosterone levels as the result of the disease itself or the side effects of particular treatments. To date, LeVay has examined the brain of only one gay man who did not die of AIDS. Furthermore, In a scientific environment where controls and standards are a necessity, LeVay did not possess a complete medical history of the individuals included in his study. He therefore was forced to assume the sexual orientation of the non-AIDS victims as being heterosexual, when some may not have been. In addition, bear in mind that he had no evidence regarding the sexual orientation of the women whose brains he examined. LeVay has admitted, and I quote, this is a quote from him, "It's important to stress what I didn't find. I did not prove homosexuality is genetic or find a genetic cause for being gay. I didn't show that gay men are born that way. This is the most common mistake people make in interpreting my work. Nor did I locate a gay center in the brain." That being said, keep in mind that William Byne is not clearly pro or con in the question that is sexual orientation determined at birth. His reasoning is, and I quote, this is from him, "Recent studies postulate biological factors as the primary basis for sexual orientation. However, there is no evidence at present to substantiate a biological theory, just as there is no compelling evidence to support any singular psychosocial explanation. While all behavior must have an ultimate biologic substrate, the appeal of the current biologic explanation for sexual orientation may derive more from dissatisfaction with the present status of psychosocial explanations that is substantiating body of experimental data. Critical review shows the evidence favoring a biological theory to be lacking. In an alternative model, temperamental and personality traits interact with the familial and social milieu as the individual's sexuality emerges. Because such traits may be heritable or developmentally influenced by hormones, the model predicts an apparent non-zero heritability for homosexuality without requiring that either genes or hormones directly influence sexual orientation per se. I'll post the link for that on the side. Excuse my many hiccups and hang-ups and in the grammar because I'm trying to hurry up and get this done. I got stuff to do. But anyway, we're going to get into the hormonal study later and debunk that. Continuing on with the problem of LeVay's work, many have argued that what LeVay discovered in the brains of these he examined was only a result of prior behavior, not the cause of it. Mark Breedlove, a researcher at the University of California at Berkeley, has demonstrated that sexual behavior has an effect on the brain. In referring to his own research, Breedlove commented, this is a quote from him, "These findings give us proof for what we theoretically know to be the cause that sexual experience can alter the structure of the brain just as genes can alter it. It's possible that differences in sexual behavior cause, rather than are caused by, differences in the brain." LeVay pretty much found nothing. He observed slight differences between the groups if you accept LeVay's method in measuring the size of neuron clusters, which some researchers do not agree. When each individual was considered by himself, there was not a significant difference. Only when the individual involved in the studies were considered in groups of homosexual versus heterosexual did differences result. Though on average, the size of the hypothalamic nuclei LeVay considered significant was indeed smaller in the men he identified as homosexual, his published data shows that the range of sizes of the individual samples was virtually the same for the heterosexual men. This is the area was larger in some homosexuals than in many of the heterosexual men, and smaller in some of the heterosexual men in many of the homosexuals. This means that though the groups showed some differences as groups, there was no way to tell anything about an individual's sexual orientation by looking at the hypothalamus. So simply looking at somebody's hypothalamus and saying it's smaller, therefore he's a homosexual, is invalid, is untrue.